Call tonight's meeting of the DeWitt Public Schools Board of Education meeting to order. Would you please stand for the pledge of the flag? I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
First order of business, I would like to make a motion to appoint Mr. Trescott as acting secretary for tonight's regular meeting. Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, Lisa. With that, will you take attendance?
You bet. Angelina Barnes. Present. Dwight Hanspike.
Here.
Jason Hanselman. Brad Stoddard. John Trematana.
Here.
Lisa Trescott. I'm here. Brad Weaver.
Here.
And Lucas.
Here.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you. Do I have a motion for adoption of the agenda, please?
So moved.
Support. Okay. Any discussion? All those in favor, please say aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Okay, we've got a busy meeting tonight, so thanks for your patience, everyone, including 3 presentations, the first of which is across the hall with the Shavy Road Elementary Music Program, Holidays Around the World and Spreading Joy, performed in the middle school auditorium with Leslie Nielsen Phelps. So anybody who'd like to participate in that presentation can join us across the hall. If not, you're more than welcome to wait here until we return.
Over there saying hello, Mrs. Phelps. Whoever that was awesome. So welcome and thank you to the board for having us this evening. We're so excited to share our voices with all of you. We have a couple songs prepared for you. You know the first song, right? The Shady Road.
We are the Shady Road Panthers.
share? Kai. I know it's hard when you're on the spot. I'm a bucket filler? How about that one? Is that good? I'm a bucket filler. That's not all. Again, here we go. Yay! All right, the next song we have for you is the DeWitt song, given in the spirit of holidays now. So let's see. Bum, ba-dum, ba-dum, ba-dum. Ready to sing? I have a little dreidel. I made it out of clay. And when it's dry and ready, oh dreidel I shall play. Oh dreidel, dreidel, dreidel. I made it out of clay. And when it's dry and ready,
Next, we have another great presentation. First, I just want to congratulate the Shaver Road Elementary Music Program. It was a fantastic show. So thank you to the kids. This is one of the favorite presentations of the meeting. I'm sorry that you all have to follow that. We'll do our best. Next, we have the DeWitt High School curriculum update with a mentorship course with Marie Richards from the DeWitt High School, our assistant principal. Welcome.
Thank you. Good evening. I'm Marie Richards. I'm one of the assistant principals at DeWitt High School. I'm here with Mr. Mike Garrett, who's assistant principal at DeWitt Middle School, and we are working together along with Jessica Pearson, who's one of our counselors at the high school as well, to bring forth a brand new program this year, which we're really excited about. We wanted to share that with all of you as we're piloting it in our early stages. So I'll kind of kick us off and then head over to Mr. Garrett, and we'll close out with some of our wonderful mentors that we have here. Am I not loud enough? Okay. We will start off with just kind of going over the program and reasons behind it, and then we will have our students here, our student mentors, share some of their experiences so far. So as part of the district strategic plan, which we began the planning phases of that last year, one of our areas of focus was fostering an inclusive, engaging, and supportive educational community, which was the learning environment and culture branch of our strategic plan. And so Mr. Garrett and I have been working together on this pretty much since last year, if not before that, with Mr. Garrett planning this and wanting to put this in place. So this was a great opportunity for us to pilot the program this year. So what it is we have a group of high school students who serve as our mentors, and they go over to the middle school 2 days a week during the seminar. And these students were kind of handpicked based on their middle school experiences, their high school experiences, their interests, their backgrounds. And so we have asked these students to be a part of this program. And we have a debrief session every Friday to go over what their experiences have been in working with our middle school students. So I'm going to hand this over to Mr. Garrett to kind of talk about what the need was for this program from the middle school perspective.
Thank you, and I appreciate having such a large turnout to hear our wonderful presentation. It is great. So, wait, you're not here for this? Well, okay, sorry. All jokes aside, middle school, right? You remember it? For most of us, we try to forget it, but it can be pretty awkward, right? And this is a part of time when students are really trying to figure out who they are, as far as an identity, instead of really seeing themselves as a reflection of how they believe they're being perceived. So, middle school can be characterized as far as copycat behavior, some peer pressure, impulsivity, and hoping and praying that that darn frontal cortex starts to develop a little bit. They mean well, they really do, and they're great kids, but typically what we see is when there's difficulties as far as peer mediation, trying to problem solve, and just learning how to communicate. So what we're trying to do is just try to help pave some of that road for some of these students in particular. And I gotta say, our high school students that have come down and really dedicated your time as well, we've been so appreciative as far as all of your contributions and the difference that you have already made in this small amount of time that we've been together.
So on top of helping to make the middle school experience a little bit better for our students, we're also hoping that this program will help with the freshman transition, which can be very difficult for many students, just coming to a new building, new types of classes, a whole bunch of different activities to be involved in. It's just a little added pressure of what are we doing after high school. So there's lots of different things that can make that transition a little bit challenging. So we're hoping this program will help with easing that transition, preparing the students to come over to the high school where they already have some peers or buddies already at the building, for them to know some friendly faces when they come over that way. Trying to prevent some of the behaviors that can get in the way of a successful high school transition. And we also want to have them be receiving that encouragement for getting involved sooner than later, so that they're already heading into high school with an idea of different clubs or teams that they can be a part of. So all of that is part of this program.
Well, I think that's key, right? Because we're trying to build a community. We're trying to make sure that kids have a spot fit in. And again, that's why we chose the people we did in order to help, people find their spots, so to speak. So if you're not familiar with this is a report that we grabbed from Swiss. This is one of our data warehouses. But I like to show this because you can see out of any grade based on behavior referrals, or this is when a kid makes a mistake, this is some of the data we can track. You can see overwhelmingly 7th grade is hard, right? It is a tough year, okay? And one of the things that we've been able to do as a result of our wonderful high school students is we've really been able to focus in on that 7th grade lunch or that unstructured time, where for many students, especially our at-risk students, that can be a really hard time, right? You're trying to navigate, you're trying to be able to make friends, you're trying to socialize, but at the same time, you're trying to do so in a way that you're not alienating yourself, but also, trying to make sure that, you have someone to connect with. So, some more data. So if we take a look at like last year, we had we had 61 total behavior referrals that occurred when we're looking at lunch and recess. So if we want to quantify that and take a look as far as where we're at, as far as now, we're at 15. So positive trend, again, showing the difference that, our high school students can have as far as talking with our students, meeting them at tables and just doing all the things that they're doing as far as helping them lead the way and show by example.
And so part of the reason why we're here tonight is we are asking the board to look at our course description for approval, because we are actually looking, because right now this is a pilot program that's occurring during seminar. These students are just volunteering their seminar time. But our hope for this program is to make it an actual class, elective class, that the students can participate in as soon as next semester, and then also then going into next year. Very kind of similar to our LINKS program in some ways, that students would be able to take this course multiple times to participate as mentors. So that's our hope with that for next year, well, actually next semester and even into next year. So we're hoping we can get that approved tonight.
And approving it will also allow us more flexibility so we can actually do more. So outside of just focusing on 7th grade lunch, for example, and 6th grade seminar, which we're starting to make inroads and getting it working with some of our 6th grade seminar classes as well, we'll have some flexibility to really work with some of our 8th grade students in seminar and at lunch, and also do more of like a mentoring type big brother, big sister, where we can actually have some of our mentors collaborate, work, and also check in with some of our students that could use that additional support. So we're really excited about having that opportunity and also having that as a resource. And long term, we're hoping to, once we get this up and running from a middle school perspective, to also have and empower some of our middle school students to then go down to Herbison Woods, where they can also make a similar impact down there as well. So again, connecting these schools, creating a bridge, and really just trying to help ease that transition. We are a great district, but we know that with the number of elementary schools that we do have, those transitions can be very difficult each year. So hoping that we can do what we can to minimize that and make sure our kids feel comfortable and have a place to go. With that said, okay, now the moment you've been waiting for, enough adults talking, we can hear from some of our high school students. So I'll turn it over to Caduce here, who's been coming over regularly on Mondays, and we'll see what he has to say.
Good afternoon. My name is Caduce Macuria, and I'd like to share with you some of my experiences with being in the middle school mentorship program. I've been working with them for a few weeks now, and I have to say it's been actually really incredibly rewarding, not only for me, but for also the students. I've just noticed so much change in the middle school, and well, from my perspective in the lunchroom, with all the peers, sitting in different places each day at lunch, and stuff like that. Through the weeks that I've been there, there's been noticeable social changes, like more student engagement with each other and kids sitting in different places with new people every day throughout the lunchroom. The mentorship can help foster a sense of community within the middle school, and from my experience so far, I've seen firsthand how the kids have benefited from this program just with us being there for 30 minutes. And I can imagine, the impact and the widespread impact that we could have if, we're there for a whole class period.
I'm Maddie Yule, and kind of going off of what Caduce said, we haven't been going over there for very long. I mean, I've only been over there 3-4 times maybe, and we're already seeing a huge impact in the students. especially kind of modeling after like the behavior we're doing. Like we're kind of going around lunch, sitting with different people, interacting with people who are sitting alone, people who just look like they're having a bad day. And kind of like when we continue to go over there, we're seeing like actual middle school students getting up and going over to sit with people who are sitting alone or having a bad day. So this really is like small, and like the small time we've been going over there has been having a huge impact. And I think if we have the opportunity to be able to go over for longer periods of time and more frequently throughout the week, I just think that it will benefit the middle schoolers and kind of maybe benefiting the elementary schools as well. So.
Hi, I'm Molly Bry. I'm a sophomore at DeWitt, obviously. Like Maddie said, I've only gone over to the middle school 3-4 times since this program has started. And I've had the opportunity to work with 7th grade during their lunch period and 6th grade during their seminar period. And like Maddie and Kadu said, during the 7th grade lunch, there have definitely been more kids leaving their friend groups and going to sit with kids who may not have someone to sit with during lunch, which is creating a sense of community amongst them and is creating new friendships every day. And then amongst the 6th graders, I feel like meeting with them during seminar has given them an opportunity to calm some of the worries they might have about the rest of middle school and about high school in their upcoming years. They've been able to talk to us and relate to us and ask us questions. And not only has it helped them relate, like go through school better, but it also has helped us like gain an idea of how to help younger students.
I mean, I can. So I'm AJ, I'm a senior. Only been over there a few times since this started. I've seen a big difference. The first time I went over there, I saw multiple students kind of sitting alone, kind of shy, didn't really want to talk to anyone. But the more and more that us high schoolers have gone over, just during lunch, I've seen a huge impact, like everyone else has said. People are sitting with other people, they're getting out, they're talking more, people are getting out of their comfort zones and trying to talk and get more friends. Yeah, a lot less on the phones, I've noticed that too. We're trying to get to where it's more social in person, not really just only social on the phones, and that really helped by having us go over there, get people off their phones, get the students off their phones and just talk.
Greatest, like, you know, when you mimic something, it's like the greatest sense of flattery, right? So what they don't know is on days when our high school students aren't in the 7th grade lunch, there's now starting to be a group of 7th graders that are now coming and working and then moving from multiple tables just to check in and have conversations with kids as well, you know, which is just absolutely amazing, you know, because again, 7th graders or middle school in general, it's all about clout or being, you know, how you perceive as being popular and everything else. So to see them mimic and also try to be inclusive has just been fantastic. So, thank you.
Yeah, we're just really excited. We're building this together with them, which is a really cool thing, that to have students and teachers and counselors all working together to make this work. So that was a very quick overview, but we know there'll be a lot on the agenda tonight. So thank you for having us, and thank you guys for being here.
I just have a comment. I just want to say thank you for this program. Thank you for bringing it forward. My son is a part of it, so I really appreciate what you guys have done. It's been helpful for him in a lot of ways. So
he does a fantastic job.
Thank you. Thank you.
I have a question. I also want to echo that I think that this is fantastic, and I'm so glad to see this starting in DeWitt. The middle school kids that participate, is it a formal thing at this point, and how are they selected, or can they ask to be part of it?
It's a great question. So at this point in time for the middle school, as far as our kids that are collaborating with the high school students, it's more informal. Once we actually get the course up and running, that'll be more formalized, where we'll actually look at that as being more of like a tier 2 intervention, or basically partnering and working with some of our at-risk students based on personality types, interests, and just helping formalize and create that opportunity and inclusiveness. Now, when we get to the point, hopefully down the road, I do agree that that could be something too that we could reflect, specifically look at having, you know, middle school students that have, you know, a diverse background and then go and have come over to purposes of arts and similar nature. So.
I have a follow-up question.
Yeah, great.
I know a lot of schools have mentorship programs that
Okay.
have won awards for their programs, and which I'll talk to you about offline on what to apply for when
Okay.
this is launched and running.
Sure.
But are you modeling this after any other programs?
We are currently grassroots and just literally going by interest and ideas and building this thing together. So, and that has been absolutely fun to be able to do and collaborate with our great high school here. So.
I'm going to circle back with you and connect you with some other programs
Thank
that I
you.
know of that have won awards and been really successful with their kids,
Awesome.
just to maybe pick their brains too.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Yep, Mitch?
How many high school students do you currently have involved?
28.
28. And like, when you think about offering this as a class, how many do you hope? Is like 28 like your max number, or are you looking to go
Not
past that?
necessarily, we kind of working on that, but we're going to offer it all 4 terms.
Okay.
And so students can kind of come in and out as their schedule allows for, so it might, the number really is going to fluctuate just depending on who can fit it into their schedule.
And is the current group getting any, like, is there any training and development for them? Or is that part of the plan? Like, where you're at with that?
Yeah, we're actually having a retreat this Friday,
Okay.
where we'll have different types of training. We're trying to join kind of bits and pieces of things, kind of some of our PALS program that we have, a Big Brothers Big Sisters a little bit. So we're kind of taking little pieces of different things to incorporate within our training, but that's this Friday.
Thank you.
Yep.
And for students who,
I was going to say, we also have a good group of students from other diverse clubs as well. So we have students from our diversity club, for example. We have students from House, student government. So we're really trying to bring in a lot to the fold and really capitalize on their leadership experience.
if this becomes a class, will that become an obstacle for, say, a student who might not have the time to fit in the class but still wants to volunteer, still wants to help? Is there a place for them to?
We're thinking of still allowing for seminar participation. That's still within their school day, because I know a lot of our students are still busy, but they can still go over during that seminar time frame in a little bit more of an informal capacity, kind of like we're doing right now. But then that would be able to continue on passing days like it's happening right now. And then we would have a little bit more of the formalized structure for those students who are in the course, with the teacher overseeing that.
More of a comment than a question. I just also wanted to say thank you, because I'm someone who's not that fresh off middle school, but kind of. I know how important it is to move from the middle school to the high school, and I wish I had someone who had that experience and could have told me that everything that you because everything you think is kind of important in middle school turns out to be a little bit less important as you go into high school. A lot of social norms change, a lot of things like that change. So I think it's important. I like that this is now being offered. So thank you.
Thank you all. Fantastic. Looking forward to it. Okay, next.
So Finance Committee met last Thursday, I believe, to run through this in a bit more detail. Wanted to run through the presentation for the approval that you'll have tonight for a budget amendment, which is typically done in December of each year. So just at a really high level, as we start to look at revenues, we approved $35 million in revenue back in June. This budget amendment is reflecting about a $39.6 million total revenue amount, which is about a $4.6 million increase from where we were in June. As we dive into the details, you're going to see that most of that is going to be in the form of some MIPSers, retirement, flow-through dollars. So the revenue's going to come in, and then we're going to turn on the backside. We're going to pay those over to the retirement system. And then we've got some one-time categoricals coming from the state, as well as some one-time federal revenue that we're recognizing. So as we dive into the details of our revenue, our first area, first bucket, if you will, is our local revenue. And that's up about $285,000 from what we projected back in June. The primary increase in our local revenue is tax revenue. So we're up about $239,000 in tax revenue year over year. What's important to note here is that for every dollar increase in property tax revenue in our general fund, the state deducts $1 in state aid that we receive. So it's a net zero-sum game for the district. However, we have to reflect local revenue for the property taxes that we'll be receiving. And you'll see on the state side that we're going to have to reduce by $239,000 the state aid that we'll be receiving in return. Interest earnings are up, and to me this is significant. I've been in school finance for 20-ish years now, and for probably the last 12, interest earnings really haven't existed. You might be able to generate a little bit with basically sitting at about a zero interest rate. We haven't had interest earnings to speak of. We're trying to manage funds and all this stuff. We are projecting a $41,000 increase in our interest earnings for this year. I'm hopeful as we start planning for the 23-24 year, we'll be able to ratchet that up even more and take advantage of where rates are. But that's kind of an exciting piece to have some actual interest generated dollars for the budget. And then we have some other miscellaneous amounts that are in our local bucket. Not a lot, but about $5,000, and that rounds up the $285,000 increase that we're seeing there. Slide over to state revenue, you're going to see there's a lot of different things, kind of ins and outs on the state revenue side. It's going to span this page and the next page, but we're up about $3 million total in state funding. The first is that taxable value of the property taxes that I spoke of, so we had to take that down to $239,000. The next two bullets relate to our foundation allowance and student count. So when the budget was approved in June, we did not have a finished state budget. We had projected that our foundation would increase to $91.35. When the state budget was finalized, it was actually $91.50, so a $15 per student increase. That translates to about a $46,000 increase in our revenue. Similarly, we had planned for a decrease in student enrollment when we had our blended FTE. We were projecting 3,082 students. We actually have a blended rate of 3,105, which is an increase of 23 FTE over budget. So that's generating an additional $210,000 for the district. Keep in mind that the 3,105 blended rate is less than our actual enrollment for next year. We had projected an enrollment decline. We were at 3,115 last year. But the good news is the decline wasn't as much as we were thinking it was going to be. So year over year, we're actually down students, but we're up from where we projected. The next two bullet points, really the next three bullet points, all deal with MIPSers and the retirement system. So we've had in play now for 5, 6, maybe even longer, a flow through of retirement dollars. So when the state originally wanted to start funding the retirement system at a higher level, they initially thought that they could, through legislation, designate an amount and basically write a check over to the retirement system. However, because school districts are the beneficiaries of the retirement program, they found that what they really needed to do was give the money to the school districts, and then the school districts had to wire or check the money over to the retirement system. So what it becomes is revenue in, and then basically a week to 10 days later, we turn around and we send the money off to the retirement system. This amount fluctuates year over year. We're actually, the amount that we're receiving this year that we have to funnel through to the retirement system is up about $142,000. And although the revenue's up, so are the expenditures, because we have to allocate that across all of our retirement accounts. So it's a net zero increase to the budget, but we have to reflect both of those to be in compliance with what we're expecting on the revenue and the expenditure side. The next bullet point kind of follows that, but it's something brand new. When the state budget was approved in, I want to say it was early July, they added a one-time $1 billion payment to the retirement system. As of today, we do not unfortunately have formal guidance on how that $1 billion is going to operate. So I made an assumption that since it's truly flow-through dollars again, it's going to function in the same manner where we're going to receive the money, we're going to have to send it to the retirement system, and we're going to have to reflect a revenue and an expenditure amount for that. I do know that MDE is having conversations with the budget office at the state level to see if there's any way to not have districts reflect that as a revenue and expenditure. If that's the case, if that's what they get an opinion on from the state's budget perspective, we'll have to come back to do an amendment to remove those dollar amounts. But I thought that this was in line with how we've handled it in the past, and without formal guidance from the state at this point, we put those in. But again, it doesn't impact the bottom line other than grossing up our revenues and our expenditures. And then the last bullet point there deals with a couple other MIPSers flow-through amounts. It's a cost offset and a DC reform. So as the state has made some adjustments to the retirement system over the last several years, they've added some of these categoricals to help districts with some of the increased costs that flow there. And those two combined are only about an $18,000 decrease from what we were projecting back in June. Second bullet from the bottom is our at-risk funds. So again, when the state finished their budget in early July, they added funding to at-risk, categorical that districts receive, and has specific criteria as to how you can use those funds. We've got about $112,000 increase that we're projecting. and it allows us to check something off of a list that we've had on for probably 5 or 6 years, which is an English language learning teacher to add into the district. So we will use those funds. You'll see that on the expenditure side with the increased at-risk funds that we have available. And then finally on this sheet, we've got a decrease in our early literacy categorical of about $27,000. There will be a corresponding expenditure decrease for the same amount. And the reason that's down is the last couple of years with COVID, we've been limited in how we've been able to use some of those funds. So we've had a little bit higher carryover that we've brought forward the last couple of years. We're finally starting to bring that carryover amount down and getting more to just our general allocation annually. Continuing with state revenue, the next 2 bullet points here are tied into our special ed categorical. So the state, when they approved their budget again, they made some tweaks to how special ed funding flows to districts. We knew that there was going to be something in the budget, and so we had budgeted an increase from where we were prior year. However, with the funding amount that settled on, it was actually a little bit more in revenue than we were budgeting. And then in addition to that, our cost year over year increased a little bit more than we were projecting, so that's driving an increase in the funding that we're receiving from the state. The second bullet point is just a one-time. So what the state does is there's always a year lag in how they're basically reimbursing us for special ed costs. So for 21-22, they base that reimbursement on 2020, 2021 actual costs. And then when we close out our year, we send a report to the state that says, here's what we actually spent for 21-22. If those dollars are higher than our 2021, we get a one-time increase in some funding. If those costs dip, we have a one-time decrease in funding on that categorical line. And so this reflects that $55,000 increase in one-time funds as they trued up, being budgeted to the actual. The next one is FIRST Robotics. We have not officially been approved for our funding for FIRST Robotics this year, but we have worked into the budget what we've requested, as well as we had a little bit of a carryover from last year in FIRST Robotics funding. So this will reflect the revenue, and then on the expenditure side, there will be a corresponding increase for where those dollars will be allocated. And then the last bullet point related to state revenue are 4 new state categoricals that the state approved with the final budget. So the first is a mental health support categorical, estimated to be about $332,000. We do not have an official award letter with an official amount yet. We're being told that'll come in January, but we were given an estimate back in late summer, early fall, as to about how much districts could expect, and that's what they were projecting for us. Similarly, there's a school safety categorical. Again, they based that on kind of a per pupil allocation, and they're projecting about $333,000 for the district. And then the next 2 are kind of tied into school safety as well, but they're their own categoricals that you can apply for. There's a risk assessment at $12,000 and a critical incident mapping categorical at $14,000. We have applied for all of those. We've worked those into our revenue. We've worked those into our expenditure amounts, and now we're just waiting for the formal approval of that. Any questions on state revenue? I know there was a lot there before we go to federal.
Rob, I just a quick question. Of all of the state revenue that's coming in, what would you consider that kind of general fund dollars? I mean, money that we don't receive for a specific purpose. I think people see that amount and they think we have a lot of this, but a lot of it is for specific purposes.
Yeah. So really, it's kind of your first 3 bullet points there, which is foundation and your enrollment. I mean, at the end of the day, they could cut your foundation, but once you get past number of students times your foundation, almost everything else is a categorical. I mean, there's certain levels that they can't with Headley and other things that they can't reduce to 0. But all these categoricals, when you talk FIRST Robotics, obviously the flow-throughs and in and out, when you talk about retirement, all those new state categoricals that we could find in February when the governor releases her budget, that none of those are going to carry forward into the budget cycle year. So the majority of those are categorical costs that could be gone a year from now, or they could be increased. And so we always want to be careful when we're bringing that revenue in and looking at where we might be spending those funds to not create some structural imbalance should they go away. That's a good question, Brad.
Thank you.
Moving on to the federal revenue line, you'll see that there's about $1.3 million increase there, and it's going to be kind of a similar story to the question that Brad asked, is that we have some one-time funds that will flow through. The first bullet point is Title I. We actually have an increase of about $8,000 over what the state projected we would have back in June. And it's not big dollars, but to me it's nice because I've been here for a dozen plus years now, and this is the first time we've actually had an increase in Title I funding. We were at about $150,000 a year when I started, and it dipped below 50. Was what we're looking at going into this year. So it is nice to see a little bit of an increase. The only thing I can think of is that were some additional dollars that came from the feds, because when you look at how those funds are calculated, fortunately I don't see us changing enough to see an increase in the funds, but it was nice to see that we do have a little bit of an increase there. We also were approved for our second round of Safe Routes to Schools funding. That's about a $17,000 increase. We've got expenditures that will match that amount. And then the last two the middle two bullet points deal with some federal funds related to ESSER. So we were made aware in the fall of ESSER 2 learning loss grant. Again, we have an estimate. We don't have an official award letter, but we were told it would probably be around $100,000 that we'll receive. We did apply for that in mid-November, and we're just awaiting to hear if we've officially been approved for that. And then ESSER 3 Section 11T is something we've got a lot of conversations about here in at the board table, as well as in admin meetings. But those are funds that had a lot of hoops tied to them, and we're generating revenue that we're able to reflect this year. And you'll see that there's kind of a little bit of a mismatch of when we'll actually have the expenditures hit. But we've added $907,000 in the discretionary learning loss category. The summer school program that we ran this past summer ran at about $112,000. The after-school program, we're projecting about $162,000 cost. Those 11T funds, if you remember, came with a lot of strings and also buckets. So we have to spend a certain percentage in after-school, a certain percentage in summer school, a certain percentage in learning loss, and then there's a small percentage left for discretionary. And then beyond that, it breaks down into where you can kind of spend those funds. And then our other grants, not a lot of activity there, about $1,000 change. And then finally, our transfers and other is mostly made up of funding that we get from our ISD, from CC RESA. That's down about $16,000, and it's primarily because of the fact that we have lower tuition costs this year. So you'll see a decrease on the expenditure side related to that. Any other questions on revenue before we move on to the expenditures? So on the expenditure side, you're going to see a lot of similarities, about 35.1 in expenditures. What was approved in June, we're looking at about 39.3 with this amendment, about a $4.2 million increase. We look at the major areas, most of them tie back to things we talked about on the revenue side. So not going to go into the first, I think, 5 bullet points, but those were all discussed. We pick up where it says DEA, DESPA, non-affiliated wage adjustments. So as we get into the year, as we know about lane changes, education advancements, new staff, we make all those adjustments and roll that into the budget amendment. So all of that's reflected in this budget. We also just finished our open enrollment for benefits about 3 weeks ago. So we've been able to work into this budget any changes that resulted through our open enrollment window. We had, adding this up, and it's kind of hard to believe, it feels like we always seem to have this happen. We had 6 teacher retirements or resignations about the time we closed the budget to get ready for approval. Now, 5 of those positions were replaced. The one position that was not replaced was almost exclusively funded by CC RESA, and with the retirement, they didn't want to continue with that funding, so the position didn't need to be replaced at the district level. The other 5 were all replaced. Talked about the increase for the English language learner position that we're using at-risk funds for. We do have a need, to start the year, we had a need for 4 additional special ed paras. That's based upon student IEPs and is really required to have in the budget. We had increased cost for utilities and fuel, as we all saw at the pump. Gas prices really jumped. We're seeing a little bit of a decline in that, but we've worked in that, as well as start to see gas rates. I think this winter people are going to have some shocks as they get their home heating bills for those that are on gas. So we've worked those utility costs in. Continue to monitor those. We actually do gas rate locks, so if we have opportunities to lock in with some lower rates, we'll do that. I reach out to our reps probably about once a month to see where things are and see if it makes sense to do anything different there. Our sub costs are trending a little bit higher than we projected in June, so I worked that into the budget. And then as we continue on with some of the major adjustments and expenditures, with our strategic plan now in place, we've set aside some dollars in the budget to be able to handle some of the things within the strategic plan. Our state aid note, we had a little bit of an increase in borrowing costs this year over last year, so we worked those into the budget, as well as we did some inflationary plus increases for building and department budgets. We did a small increase from last year, but before that it had been several years. So this is trying to get them caught back up, kind of where they are from an inflationary standpoint. And then we did have a net overall decrease in some of our post-secondary costs related to dual enrollment and the other programs that you see there. I spoke of the voc ed tuition on the revenue side. And then finally, we have some one-time costs that are flowing through related to ESSER and equalization. So again, we talked about the summer school and after-school programming and the learning loss. And then we've got some dollars allocated into different programs and department budgets for some one-time costs that we have. Any questions on the expenditures side?
Rob, you mentioned that there was a position after retirement that CC Risa didn't want to continue to fund. What position was that?
It was a position, it was a voc ed position that they had where the teacher actually worked with CC Risa for basically, I think it was like 80% of the day. And so they spent most of their time working on voc ed programming and doing some unique things there. Things that benefited our students, but was tied in directly with CC Risa, and then the rest of the time was spent here at the high school. Any other questions? Now, this is kind of all that rolled into the numbers side of everything. So again, you'll see on the revenue side, $39.6 million in total revenue. Down at the bottom, total expenditures at $39.3 million. And then focus on the bottom five. So our excess revenues over expenditures is $344,275. We have $6.1 million of fund balance as we audited out our 6/30/2022 year, and we're projecting to be at about $6.5 million as we end this year, which is about 16.5% fund balance. However, there's a little bit more to the story because of some of the ins and outs of these one-time funds. So we put this together, hopefully it puts a little context to some of the things that are out there. So if you take that $344,000 figure, excess revenue over expenditures that was on this slide, and then you look at some of the one-time ins and outs of revenue and expenditures. So we have the 11T and the ESSER 3 revenue. We've got about $1.6 million, so $1,579,621 which got reflected as revenue this year. The costs that we're actually looking to use those funds for are totaling about $673,000. And then we have our equalization expenditures, so we reflected that revenue in the prior year and it spent some of that last year. We had an assigned fund balance for the balance, and that's been worked into the budget now. So if we work those things out, our actual revised excess revenue over expenditure, when we take those one-time pieces away, is about $50,000. And that's good news because in June, we had a budget approved that had about a negative $58,000. So we were able to swing it about $158,000 on top of being able to do some of these things. So we're in a good spot structurally with our budget. And then you have to take that down into fund balance as well. Because as you know, with 11T, before we got word from the state that the way we wanted to originally funnel everything through kind of had to take a little bit of a detour, we were hoping to be able to cover those costs longer term and over multiple years for the specialists, the 11T paras, and our assistant principal positions. So what this will do is, you'll see we reflected $1.6 million of revenue and we had about $673,000 of expenditures. That leaves us with $907,000 in the future years to be able to cover those positions. With the hope of, by the time we're all the way through this, we've got about 5 years worth of costs that we can cover, and it allows the board to have conversations about what those positions might need to look like long term and don't have to make quick decisions on any of those. And those positions are all doing really wonderful things. So when you take that $906,778 out of fund balance, you'll see that our unreserved is about $5.6 million, about 14.2%, and then that assigned fund balance is about 2.3%, which then gets you to that 16.48% total fund balance. And I thought it was good just to have that perspective of kind of what we're doing planning long term, while also kind of keeping a focus on where our unreserved fund balance is sitting. So any questions on that? If not, my last slide just talks about what's new for this year. So we are, as a district, we are managing without any additional administrative positions, 10 new grants or categoricals. That's on top of what we typically do. That's on top of the ESSERs that's flowed in and out the last 2 years. But we've got 4 state categoricals or grants: the mental health support, school safety, risk assessment, and critical incident mapping. And then we also have really 3 to 7, depending on how you want to carve that out, with our federal grants. So the ESSER 3 learning loss, the ESSER 3, and then our Section 11T, which has the 4 components of learning loss: after school, summer school, and discretionary. So that's more of an informational slide, just to kind of put some perspective in the number of one-time or maybe multi-year programs that are new this year that the district is working through. So with that, that would conclude my presentation, unless there's any final questions.
Just a comment. Rob, I just want to say thanks. I know this is very simplified from a lot of the things that happen behind the scenes. So I appreciate your work on this. I know there's a lot of calculations that go into all of this, and all these different pots of money have different requirements. So thank you very much. Appreciate all you do. And I know there's other districts that do this with a lot more people than what you have. So thank you very much. We appreciate it.
So with that being said, I think it's important that when you speak to legislators, to talk a little bit about how it's important that versus categorical funds like these, which have a lot of strings attached, to ask for an increase in the foundation allowance versus this, because local districts know where that money needs to be spent, and there aren't as many hoops to jump through. So just something to think about.
I would just echo what Brad said, Rob. Just thank you to you and your team, everybody. Like, I can't imagine how much work this is, and the stress that you all are under in trying to do this just so we can have this kind of high-level information. It's greatly appreciated.
We have a great team from Brian, curriculum side, Dr. Spicker, our principals. I mean, it takes everyone to kind of pull all this together. But it's a lot of things. The 11T is a ton of hoops to try to get through. We're still working through kind of all the calculations, and Brian's getting information still, so it's a work in progress. But there's a lot. I would use the analogy of the duck on the water. It kind of looks, we stand up here and we go through this in 15, 20 minutes, but the legs underneath are going a million miles an hour. There's a lot of things that we're all trying to do to make sure that we're providing the best for our students. Thank you.
Okay, next, the student representative report. Lucas.
Thank you everyone for obviously coming. I'm not going to go on and on forever. I know most people don't want to hear me go on and on forever, so I'll try to keep this as short and sweet as possible. I want to start off with going over results from last month's food drive. Students had brought in a total of 1,080 items. Those items were delivered to food pantries at Redeemer's Church and St. Jude's Children's Hospital. Next, there will, starting on Friday, December 23rd to Monday, January 9th, there will be no school. That will be holiday break. Yesterday, Sunday, December 11th, we kicked off what we're calling DeWitt Gives Back. Is a sequence of charity events that each school will be doing. Started with our yearly volley rough game that student government plans each year. We brought in total, I think we gained $750 for the charity. I believe it was kindergarten that we were donating to, and people also brought in school supplies, hats, mittens. It was very helpful, and thank you to everyone who donated and came to help and support. With sports, on Wednesday, December 7th, the boys swim team traveled to the Waverly Relays and came in first place for the first time since 1992. So if you see a swimmer, congratulate them. We have one in the front row right here. The boys wrestling team also opened up their season with a CAAC blue win over Waverly, and the girls wrestling team competed in what may be the first ever MHSA girl dual competition, of which the Panthers came out victorious 30-24. Student government has planned 2 weeks of Spirit Days to coincide with DeWitt Gives Back, and we're calling it DeWitt's Winter Wonderland Weeks. So that will be, there's information that will be put onto social media. You can also contact teachers and administrators to see what other things are happening. Student government's also organized candygrams and just things so students can come in during lunch and donate $1. That will also be donated to charity, and you can also write a nice message to a friend or a teacher who you just want to say thank you to or just write a nice message to. And that will be going on from Monday, December 12th, today, to Friday, December 16th. And then National Honor Society on November 29th inducted 89 new students into the National Honor Society. This brings the total number of students in NHS to 139. Students will have to achieve a minimum of 25 hours of community service if it is their first year, and 35 hours if it is their second year. And that will have to be met by the beginning of June of next year. Service opportunities can be found on the Helper Helper app and also around the community as time goes on. That's about it, so I hope everyone has a happy holidays moving forward and a happy new year.
Thank you, appreciate it. Any questions? Okay. Public communication. For items found on the agenda, it is the practice of the Board of Education to permit persons in the audience to make statements concerning agenda items at this time. If you haven't already, please complete a public comment form and return it to the board desk if you wish to speak or prefer to express a written comment. Public comment shall be limited to 3 minutes.
Neil Randall.
Good evening, everyone. This has been a full year since I think I done my first presentation back in December asking for the archery program to have teachers certified and NAS guidelines followed so that the kids can have this taught in the classroom with certified teachers on an elective, that every kid in DeWitt will have an opportunity to learn archery as it was brought forth through this program. This program is the best program I've ever seen. And I just want to reiterate, you are the program. This program does not exist without the school. Everything after that transpires into a wonderful event for kids to compete, but without the first part of it, nothing else really matters. In order for this to be successful and continue, persons like myself, I got certified. I had to have a contract signed by Keith Bravado, which is your middle school principal, so that I could go take a class, get certified, and work with kids to learn this program properly. Other coaches like myself have done the same thing. We're simply asking, you've seen enough emails, you've seen enough phone calls, text messages, something's not right here. At the end of January, I'm going to have a court date. I'm going to bring you some paperwork that's going to educate a lot of things that are being asked right now. Hopefully that'll clarify it. I'm asking that you give this group of parents that are reaching out with coaches and kids the opportunity to do this right for the community, for the kids, and for the school. This is where it benefits you guys. We can help as parents and coaches make this transition right for everybody to be successful. What we're seeing right now is not how it's supposed to be. The current situation is the only situation in the state where it's actually run backwards. Somebody's profiting money in their back pocket instead of allocating it to the kids in the program as it's meant to be. We want to see this done correctly. Again, my contract is a bond with the principal that I signed with to help teach these kids this archery program correctly. Please look into this. Please vote on this. Make this something that we can have so that next semester, when these kids go back into school after the holiday, they have a positive thing to look forward to. Thank you very much for your time.
Samantha Main.
Hi everybody, how are you? Not nervous at all, I swear. But first I want to say thank you for all of the time, consideration, and everything you've given to our team. Like, I know over the last 12 months you guys have spent a lot of time on the DeWitt archery team and where we stand in the school district. So I want to say thank you for that. Now I'm going to start out with some good points that happened already this year. We've had 2 tournaments we've been to, one of which was in Portage, and our high school team came in second, and we had 1 archer come in second. We had our middle school came in third with another archer coming in second. At the Grand Left tournament, high school came in third with 1 archer coming in fourth, and middle school came in fourth with an archer coming in second. So we've done pretty good already. We've gotten 4 trophies and 4 medals out of 2 tournaments. High school has 12 new archers, to include 2 foreign exchange students out of 29. The middle school has 20 new archers out of 27. A lot of that reason being our largest portion were 8th graders last year. So they're in high school now. Our new board has had 2 meetings. Notes and financials are available for anyone, and parents were invited to attend. And I do have those here if you'd like them, the board meeting agenda notes and all of our financials for last year and this year. We have had points made about things that we need to address with our program. And we have tried to address each and every one. The last coach who was let go, he wasn't fired due to financials. He threw some personal archer's equipment and became so aggressive that to this day, we don't feel comfortable walking out of practice alone. It had nothing to do with our financial transparency. And my military service and disability from such has also been used against me time and time again. And I think that if that was valid, then Mr. Stoddard wouldn't have offered me my first job when I got out of the Army. And he was also dishonest and was not certified until the end of the season of last year. His certification never went through, which was completely unsafe and incorrect. We have addressed all of those issues. Kathy Garland, who is our DNR rep, who has spoken to the superintendent, I believe, is currently on leave from the DNR until the end of January for various reasons. And she will be issuing a retraction regarding comments made about my safety on the range. We now have liability insurance for our archers and coaches. We even have a ton of teachers' kids on our teams this year. It's kind of fun.
It's been 3 minutes, so that's okay.
All right, sorry. Okay, we're looking into becoming an LLC nonprofit, which meets all the criteria for a nonprofit. It will include a tax-exempt nonprofit tax ID number. Our bylaws will be done within the week. We've also redone our code of conduct. We've also addressed the continuation of the program and term limits for board members and coaches. We have a list of parents who want to get certified as coaches, but we are waiting on the outcome of tonight's meeting to see if we can get that done. Ending on a positive note, real quick, coaching has brought me closer not only to my own son, but other archers as well.
Thank you.
We're not just a team, but a family. We managed to have a lot of fun by getting a lot done. The new archers have come incredibly far. I'm so proud of all of our archers to have this kind of sport that's inclusive for everyone and for kids that aren't comfortable, you know, being super athletic is a good thing.
Thank you.
Yep, thank you.
Thank you so much. And I'm sorry if I said your last name wrong.
I wrote my handwriting. You can't read my own.
Jonathan Baring.
Hello, everybody. I'm here to speak on policy 9150 tonight. Just some of the revisions that have been made in the time since the last meeting still concern me. Namely, the words may and any. So I ask that all of you in the audience and here at the board take a look at the words may and any. Since the red language was stricken and the green language was input and then stricken and then revised again, the original verbiage has gotten watered down to the point where basically anyone and everyone can slip through the cracks. And if this is really about children's safety, you've opened the net for anyone to crawl through. In addition to that, really the responsibility is no longer on the sex offender who is potentially going to be coming onto campus. It's says by saying may, conditions may be imposed by the superintendent. That's very passive language suggesting that a sex offender could in fact come to campus, and it's really up to whether or not the superintendent were to have eyes on that subject in the first place. So conditions may be imposed, but the sex offender may just waltz on to campus as well. Now, reading on that says conditions may be imposed by the superintendent on, instead of the individual, any individuals. So that means any of you individuals as well, even if you're not a sex offender, but you may just have a different viewpoint, you may cut your hair differently, you may have a kid that's a troublemaker, You may have voted or expressed your interest in voting in a certain political race on social media, and so that casts a very big net. So we have a net with large holes, and we have a very large net to scoop up anyone that is deemed unfit. And so that's my other question too. So if we're going to expand that language to any individual, what is the litmus test, and what is the rubric for meeting that criteria to then either be able to come to campus or require check-in or escorts or timed and location limitations? So may and any. Please review those, please.
Thank you. Jamie Guerrero? Okay. Ryan Tabor?
Good evening. My name is Ryan Tabor. I am not a resident of DeWitt. However, my daughter is a 9th grader at the high school right now. She's attended DeWitt schools since kindergarten. I am currently the treasurer for the DeWitt Archery Club. I have been the treasurer since approximately September, the end of September. I am also one of multiple parents who have stepped forward and volunteered to be an assistant coach for the program. However, I have not been able to fully help on the range, as I have not been able to gain the basic archery instruction certification from NASP due to the pending forms that need to be signed by principals. The existing DeWitt Archery Club has a very noble purpose to promote archery and educate archers within the DeWitt Public Schools. In order to compete as a team under the National Archeries in School program, and we follow the NASP rules. One of the goal statements from the district's strategic plan is to foster an inclusive, engaging, and supportive educational community. And our program aligns with that strategic goal by providing an opportunity for those kids who may not strive in more mainstream sports to learn a sport that is also a lifelong skill. For the fall season that is ending this week, we had approximately 60 archers. That's a lot of kids, in my opinion, that we're helping out, and we're having a lot of fun. As Samantha Main indicated, we had 2 very successful tournaments where we brought home medals and trophies, and we had a lot of fun doing it. If you combine those achievements with the successes of our first 2 seasons, or previous seasons, where that were capped by our appearance at state finals and a national tournament, it is clear that this program is being built on a foundation of excellence. I expect that we are going to see a net increase in the number of archers that would like to participate in the upcoming winter and spring season. The current organization of the club, while not a 501c3, provides financial transparency, succession, and longevity. We have an established board that consists of a president, a vice president, a treasurer, coaches, and parent trustees. We foster clear and positive communication with our parents and archers, and the program is modeled after multiple other successful programs within the Mid-Michigan area. We continue to poll our parents, we have and we will continue to poll our parents throughout the seasons to see if they have any suggestions for improvements, and we're going to act on those results. I'm asking this board support the current program and provide approval for the school principals to sign the NASP forms required to allow individual volunteers to step forward and receive the training required to become assistant coaches and to keep this program operating. Removing that roadblock and rejecting any external or power grabs on the side is going to benefit the students of this school district.
You've hit your 3 minutes. I don't know if you can wrap. Are you wrapped up? Okay. Thank you so much. Will Thompson.
Good evening. I'll try to set my watch so I don't go over 3 minutes. First of all, and I've asked this before, I'd like to request this meeting be moved so it's not on the same night as the township and city meetings. I was told it was moved a half hour early so they wouldn't conflict. Look at this meeting, we're already well after 7. You can't make both meetings. We have an opportunity, it's a new year, I don't see anything posted. I would ask respectfully for this not to be on the same night. Next, I'd like to discuss the proposed changes to the visitor policy 9150. First of all, I can tell you I had no idea that registered sex offenders were even allowed in schools, so that's where I'm starting from. It's very concerning to me and probably a lot of people. I can't personally think of a good reason they should be allowed to attend school activities, but perhaps it's allowed by law. The original verbiage said that parents who are registered sex offenders may be able to attend school activities. That doesn't mean they can go to school activities. They may if they meet conditions. Now you've taken out any reference to registered sex offenders, and it just says the super may set conditions for any visitors. There's a lot of questions. First of all, this is on the agenda as a second reading. The verbiage is totally changed from the last reading, so this is not the second reading. So I don't know procedurally how that can be, but I think it should be this is the first reading. Secondly, the original verbiage says parents who are registered sex offenders may be allowed. Now it just says the super may impose conditions. So is the standard posture that any sex offender can attend events and maybe there will be conditions and maybe not? That's concerning. Are we required to allow registered sex offenders in our school? What is the law, and could you share that? Fourth, are registered sex offenders now attending school functions? How frequently and under what circumstances? Finally, how is this ensuring the safety of our kids, which is the most important thing we can all be about? As I've said many times, parents want to know what's going on in the school, what actions the board is taking to keep the safe atmosphere at school. They want to know why this verbiage has changed. Presumably, everyone here has discussed all of the questions that I've asked. I'm simply asking for transparency and for that to be shared with all of us. I am totally opposed to this new verbiage, especially until more explanation and questions are answered. Thank you.
Thank you. Chelsea Brown.
Well, I'm going to echo a lot of that. Last month, many of us were here with concerns about the visitor policy being revised to be more inclusive of sex offenders. Many parents emailed and came to speak with questions about these changes, and the superintendent told us that at the meeting that the revisions were required to comply with changes to the law. Not surprisingly, that's just ridiculous and untrue. In 2020, the Sixth Circuit Court of Appeals ruled that some aspects of Michigan's sex offender laws were unconstitutional, and as a result, the state legislature had to change them. Those changes happened in March 2021, almost 2 years ago. And the only struck down part of the law that even comes close to this issue was that the previous ban on sex offenders living near schools was ruled unconstitutional. But I see someone has been busy again since last month, and there's another proposed revision to the policy. How did this new suggested update come to be? Who wrote it? Why is this policy even being updated in the first place? Policy making is the job of the board, and the law requires you to do it before us and explain yourselves, not conduct business behind the scenes as you continue to do and defend anyways. The new proposed policy update states in part, quote, conditions may be imposed by the superintendent on any individual's campus visit governing the terms and conditions of the visit, end quote. Respectfully, what the hell is the point of any individual language? Why have we gone from principals restricting sex offenders, which is a necessary and good and uncontroversial policy, to the superintendent having the sole power to restrict anyone she feels like? Was the super maybe feeling a little stripped of the power to do what she feels is truly best? Because giving the super more power is the only thing this policy changes. Someone has cleverly removed the problematic buzzword sex offender, no doubt plotting to pretend to have heeded our calls to abandon this update. But the cynical change would still allow more sex offenders access to kids, as any individual does in fact include predators. We are not fooled, and you should be ashamed. All of this is offensive, dangerous insanity. Children should have spaces where they are free from the leering eyes of predators. I already don't allow my own innocent babies anywhere near DeWitt's learning loss centers, but if I did, this would absolutely be the final straw. Inclusivity has to have an outer limit somewhere, and I cannot believe this has to be said, but it should be drawn well shy of inviting people convicted of sex crimes to interact with children. I also can't help but remember that the teacher comfort line Shanna tried to feed me when confronted about the shadow updates to the same policy last year that banned parents. Are teachers comfortable with this? Have you asked them? The super's fond of sending out surveys. Why isn't there a survey of the community on this issue? This policy update is sinister and horrific, and the board should reject the changes to protect the innocent rather than enabling abusers. Thank you.
We will move on to the consent agenda. Is It's a recommendation by Superintendent Shauna Spickard that the Board of Education approve, adopt, accept the following items for immediate implementation and appropriate action as presented. Approval of minutes for regular meeting November 14th, 2022, closed session November 14th, 22, work session November 28th, 22, closed session November 28th, 22, Finance Committee December 8th, 22, the Treasurer's reports bills for payment for the month of November 2022. The Treasurer reviewed and confirmed the checks, ACH debits, and the purchase card for the month of November 22nd. You have in front of you the closed session minutes for review. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Any support?
Support.
Any further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Next, into action items. First, we have the 2022-23 DeWitt Public Schools budget amendment. It's a recommendation by Assistant Superintendent Rob Spagnolo and Superintendent Shauna Spickard that the Board of Education approve the following amended budget for the 22-23 fiscal year for DeWitt Public Schools. General fund total revenues $39,597,806. Total expenditures of $39,253,531, with revenue exceeding expenditures by $344,275, resulting in an estimated fund balance as of June 30, 2023 of $6,467,522 as presented. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, moved and supported. Any discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Next, we will do bond construction, Herbison Woods Elementary, transportation building, and campus power upgrades. This recommendation by Superintendent Shauna Spickard that the Board of Education award the 2021 building and site capital projects to Clark Construction for guaranteed maximum pricing for bid package number 5, Amendment F, in the amount of $5,738,065. The scope of the work for bid package 5 includes interior renovations of Herbison Woods Elementary, the district transportation building, campus power replacement, and bid alternate number 4. Plant Moran Cressa and Clark Construction have provided recommendation letters for board review. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Any support?
Support.
Okay. Further discussion? Shauna, Rob, anything to add on this one?
Well, they're both here if you have any questions, and I don't know if you want to just kind of give a quick overview for them.
Sure.
Great.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. So I'm here with Dave from Clark Construction, members of the Bear Plant Moran Cressa. We're here with a recommendation for the GMP amendment for the renovations at Herbison Woods and the transportation building, as well as the main campus power upgrades. So the overall scope of that, this was bid out about 2.5 years ago when we put the initial budgets together. Clark Construction has revalidated those bids during the process of developing the project. And fortunately, we actually found that the actual Clark Construction numbers came in less than what our estimates were, which is a nice surprise. You don't hear a lot of that these days, so great job, Dave. They've got some directors that are going to be able to bring us our project a little bit under budget, which is always a plus. So on that basis, I don't know what else to tell you. If you have more questions for me, so
Questions for me?
You actually answered my questions as you spoke, so I appreciate that.
Easy one.
Oh, okay, good.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right,
Thank
thank
you.
you. Appreciate your time.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Next is the 2022-23 DeWitt High School Curriculum Guide Amendment for Mentorship Course. The presentation we saw earlier today. Recommendation by Superintendent Shauna Spickard that the Board of Education approve the amended 2022-23 DeWitt High School Curriculum Guide as presented. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Okay.
Support.
Moved and supported. Any discussion? Sure.
Do we know when this would go into effect, when it would be available?
So for second semester, that's why we're here today, is because it would go in effect for second semester. Because usually in January, February, we would bring the curriculum guide for next year. So that's why we're asking for the approval.
Do we also know who's teaching? Yeah. Who's going to teach the class?
Do we know who's teaching the class?
That's currently being arranged. It may be me as a teacher of record for this year, it just depends. That's still being arranged.
But that wouldn't be an obstacle, Maria, of holding this up.
No, it's a pilot.
Any further discussion? Okay, it's been moved and supported. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Okay, next, the second reading of policies. It's a recommendation by Superintendent Shauna Spicker that the Board of Education place on second reading for adoption as presented. Policy 0144.1, compensation. Policy 6108, authorization to use electronic fund transfers and automated clearinghouse arrangements. Policy 6460, vendor relations. Policy 6700, Labor Standards Act. Policy 7440.03, small unmanned aircraft systems. And Policy 9150, school visitors. Do I have a motion? So moved. Okay. Any support? Any support from there? Support. Okay, moved and supported. Any further discussion?
Yes, I would like to move that policy 9150 school visitors be postponed for an opportunity for further discussion.
Do we have to amend the motion?
Yes.
I'll accept that.
Okay.
In my motion.
Moved. Any second?
Support.
Okay, so we'll do that one first, and then we'll come back to the rest of them. Does that make sense for everybody?
Yep.
Okay. So the motion is to postpone policy 9150 on school visitors. Motion on the floor has been moved and seconded. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Okay, for the rest of the policies, the remaining 5 of them?
Maybe I should have done this during discussion for the last one, but there were a series of questions that we asked on 9150. Can we get those in writing as, or just communicated to us in some way?
Sure. So,
I had asked about just the legislative history of this. There were court cases that were involved in this. I just want to make sure we all have that information as part of.
And just so you know, so I went back to Neola to say, you know, is this something that we have to take? What language, other language could we use? And so he went back to talk, our rep went back to talk to legal counsel and basically said, we could keep what we have, but one of the things that we're doing is that if for some reason we did prevent someone, it could be considered arbitrary and capricious, and their legal counsel did recommend. So then I also reached out to Troon to ask for their opinion on it as well. And so one of the things there is that they actually were the ones that said they support the policy, but the wording, you know, not so much. So they're the ones who gave the suggestion of removing the one line. So the paragraph prior to that paragraph already basically says that the superintendent can exclude. And so Neola said we could just use that paragraph alone for, you know, any reason, but again, it could be considered arbitrary and capricious if it were to go to court. So unfortunately, with the change of the law, there is no longer any stipulation that sex offenders can't come. So what Neola and Troon were both saying is by having that language in there, then we can prevent. So I have no problem with taking it back, and you know, we'll be talking in January about a policy committee, and so you know, we can explore that more and get to where we're more comfortable with the language.
I know you addressed a lot of these questions that were raised at the last meeting, so can you just briefly talk about that, what this change is? First of all, it's a legal change that we're obligated to meet, but sex offenders are also not prevented from schools.
That is correct.
Explain to us why a convicted sex offender may need to enter a school building.
So Public Act of 295 basically did away with the, I think it's 1,000 feet rule, and so not preventing sex offenders. Here's the problem, is that no sex offender is going to claim I'm a sex offender and want to come on campus. So right now, I mean, they could be at concerts, ball games, evening things. They will not be with students on a volunteer basis, because all of our volunteers are ICHAT approved, and then anything that comes up of any, you know, specific nature and hit, HR reviews them and then I review them. So we're not allowing that to be placed. So parents have always had the right to be on there, but we do put different stipulations in. If a parent needs to be on and they are on the sex offender registry, but now anyone legally doesn't have to proclaim that they're a sex offender and stay on campus.
So if they're on the registry, they do not need to inform you?
No.
And that was the change in the law, that was part
The
of the logic.
1,000 feet was the change, so the 1,000 feet is still in effect for certain things, but not for sex offenders. So basically, the Public Act of 295 in 2020, which went in effect of March 21, amends it's called SORA, which is the Sex Offenders Registry Act. So the student safety zone, which was defined of areas of 1,000 feet or less from school property, was the piece that was amended. So, and again, I don't think it's anything that we would necessarily get caught on or taken to court on, but we can't prevent. And so what the attorneys from both Neola and Troon says, by having this language in here, we can't prevent it.
Okay. So I have a question. Are other districts, and you may or may not know this answer, so this may take research, are other districts, as they look to make changes in this language, only saying superintendent? What happens if you're out? Who is the next person
Yeah,
to
could
make
we
the
maybe
call?
add like an and/or building principals or something?
We can, but the building principals aren't the ones making that decision now. So we have consistent decision making that's happening. So that would be a lot of eyes on somebody's background history.
Right, but if you're out, who makes the call?
So HR makes the call, but then those serious ones come to me. So it could be, you know, Mr. Spagnolo, it could be, it could rest with the HR
So
who's
someone
got a
else
lot of
from central staff.
experience. Yeah.
Okay.
And we could put superintendent or designee.
The motion for this was to postpone it though for.
Correct.
I think there's just having some discussion.
Yeah.
I'm curious if you've reached out to the insurance companies to get their legal advice, given that they would be the ones that would be actually defending the district, should there be a lawsuit? We at least don't have to pay for that legal advice.
Yeah.
But it might be good to get. You're saying our
Setting.
liability coverage?
I could reach out.
And I would just be.
No, I was just gonna clarify whether they can't render legal advice.
Oh, they can.
Well, I mean, an insurance company can't render legal advice.
But their legal counsel could, couldn't they?
I mean, if they're legal counsel and they're licensed, I don't know if it's considered attorney-client privilege.
But I think
I can tell you that they get calls like
Yeah,
this all the time.
and we've reached
they-
out with stuff like that because, yeah, absolutely. But one of the things that we can do is, again, in January, I'd like to make a motion that we add another committee. That committee can discuss it, or we can have the Neola rep come back out, take a look at things. And Troon was willing to do a written opinion on the matter as well.
Thank you. So that motion, we voted on that, right? Deb? I'm sorry, okay. So now we're asking for the other motion to approve and move forward the other updates to the remaining policies. Do I have a motion for that?
We should already have a motion for that.
Yep, the original one.
Yeah.
Okay. And second? Okay. Any further discussion on those five?
There was a question when we discussed the first read of the unmanned aircraft systems and the impact on student clubs. I don't know if did we get an answer on that?
Yeah, so basically, if the students don't meet the federal requirement, they shouldn't be flying the aircraft. So we're not changing policy. The only thing we're doing is adding the federal regulation to the policy. So that's where, I mean, when I called the clarification on that, they're like, SETSEG will have a hard time if you're not following federal regulations. If somebody that doesn't meet, you have to be 16 years of age, you have to have a license, so.
Do we know if we are still following that with having this club?
We will make sure that we are. So when
It's fairly easy to do. I mean, to get registered as a drone pilot.
and I think I was told that they were flying inside, which is different than flying outside too.
I did a check currently, I don't know that we actually have a club. It's not in the list of clubs that I can find, but.
It is not on this year.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Any further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion carries. Next is the superintendent evaluation results. The DeWitt Public Schools Board of Education met in closed session on Monday, November 28th, 2022 to evaluate Superintendent Dr. Shauna R. Spickard for the 2022 school year. Ms. Tricia Murphy Alderman, MASB consultant, served as facilitator for the closed session. The board's performance evaluation system objectively measured the superintendent's performance in several goal areas. For those listed in professional practice ratings, governance and board relations, a score of 3.67 for 20% of the evaluation for a total of 0.73 points. Community relations, 3.83 at 15% for 0.58. Staff relations, 3.86 at 15% for 0.58. Business and finance, 3.8 at 20% for 0.76. Instructional leadership, 3.85 at 30% for 1.16. A total of professional practice score of 3.8 or a 95%. Student growth and progress toward district-wide goals that are based on student assessment data are as follows. Student growth, 4.0 at 40% for 1.6, and progress toward district-wide goals at 3.0 at 10% for 0.30, with an overall performance rating of 3.80 for 95% or highly effective. A copy of the superintendent evaluation tool and performance indicators is included with the official minutes. The consensus of all the board members was to assign the superintendent an overall rating of highly effective. Do we have a motion to accept the results of that evaluation? Support. Motion moved and supported. Any discussion or comments to share about the evaluation process?
I just want to say thank you. I think you're doing a good job. Appreciate all of your help, leadership. Thank you.
Thank you for all the documentation you provided to support what you've done over the last year. I think you've moved our district in some ways that we needed, and so I appreciate the efforts that you've done. Look forward to continuing to work with you.
I just want to share that we use a very specific evaluation tool provided by the Michigan Association of School Boards. So it's not like we just sit around and arbitrarily discuss this evaluation. We have to go through this very specific tool. I think that's important for people to know. I also want to thank you. I think that you came on board during quite possibly the most difficult time in public education, maybe ever. So you had a lot of things to deal with and address, and you can never make everybody happy, but you're working very hard to connect with the community. I think you're continuing to grow in your position, and I think it's really challenging, and I appreciate your continued effort to communicate with people and to be present at events and in the community. So thank you for everything that you're doing.
Yeah, I would agree. I would echo those comments. I just think you've done a fantastic job, particularly now that we're into year 2. The growth you had from an effective rating last year is highly effective. This year, you've taken feedback from the board very well. You take your job very seriously. I appreciate what you have done and how you've improved our communication efforts with the community as well. And I think that the vast majority of people are very happy with what you've done here. So thank you for being here, and thank you for what you do, despite some of the nastiness that is said to you that I think is very undeserved. But people do have the right to make those comments, and we will listen to those comments as we move forward. But I just think it's very hard to do a job, such a public-facing job, when people come here, most of the time solely to criticize. You don't hear a lot of the good things from folks in the community who think you're doing a phenomenal job. They don't come here and get in front of the microphone. So I've heard that in the community. I know other board members have as well. And so I just wanted to say thank you. Any other comments before we vote? Okay, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Next item on the agenda is the superintendent's contract. Is the recommendation that the Board of Education approve the superintendent contract for Dr. Shauna R. Spickard to be extended through June 30th, 2026 as presented. Do I have a motion? Okay, moved and supported. Any discussion on that? Just background is common practice after the superintendent's evaluation to extend that contract. Superintendents in Michigan tend to have a rolling 3-year contract, and so that's what this will be extended for that 3-year. Any other comments or discussion? Okay. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure.
Okay, discussion on Board of Education scholarships. Just want to make sure we're moving forward with this. For those of you who don't know, about 10 years ago in 2012, the DeWitt Board of Education members created a board scholarship of $500 for a DeWitt High School senior. And this scholarship was and is funded solely by board member donations. So the minimum amount that we get paid to do this, I know everyone thinks that we're really rolling it in, but I can tell you we're not. That money gets donated to scholarships for students. And in 2021, the DeWitt Board of Education agreed to offer 2 of those scholarships. So even more money goes toward that now, 2 of those $500 scholarships to DeWitt High School students. The criteria for that scholarship recipient are a student who has exhibited exemplary citizenship and or succeeded in trying circumstances, and who, in the opinion of the high school counselors, would most benefit from those scholarship funds. Just wanted to make sure everyone here, no formal vote necessary, but good to continue that, and wanted to give the community a little background on what that was.
Thank you.
And Deb, I know you do this. Can we just make sure we know who received the scholarship and
Yes.
as board members, just so we can reach out to them? So,
It'll be done usually in May, maybe April.
And that is awarded at Senior Awards Night in late May, right before graduation.
Thank you.
Okay. Public communications for items not found on the agenda.
Actually, Lisa, I put my original one over there.
Oh.
I just ran out and got a new one. I
Okay,
guess
yeah, because you weren't in here.
No, I
But
didn't
come on
find
up.
it. Y'all looked at me like, you're not going to speak?
Well, I wondered
Yes,
the
I'm
same
going to
thing,
speak.
Clay.
There's a new one for you.
Okay, thank you.
Clay.
Thank you.
Guys, I had a whole speech. Sean, Will, and Chelsea stole my thunder with all the legalese. First, and actually it's kind of fortuitous that I'm going after, you made the motion to discuss it further. Good job. I strongly suggest when you go into that meeting, 1, offer it to the public. There's a lot of questions that come my way. We discussed this 9150 a lot. You're playing with fire on that one. You all know what I do for a living on both sides. I made that mention back in May when we had the special session. I can bring in field teams of people that pursue, chase, expose, and have arrested online childhood predators. Okay? These aren't 18-year-old John Tremontana dating 17-and-a-half-year-old Angelina Barnes back in 1986, and then mommy gets mad and then sends you to jail. No. These people on the registry, and it is public, they're not going to walk into your school saying, hi, I'm a sex pedophile. No, they're not going to do that. It is common. We know every one of their names. We already have eyes on them. I want you all, when you go into that meeting, to put the language correct, because there's a good discussion there. You all had good questions. Fantastic. Ask yourself if you want your child to go to a school where a pedophile could walk in. Okay? If they come near my daughters, you better pray to God the cops get there before I do. That's all I can say. As you're doing this, the updating of 9150, I know you have a lot on your plate. Again, special shout out to Angelina. She and I don't agree on much, but great job in making the motion to postpone that. Don't rush it. You only have one chance. You already have drugs in this community. You already have weapons in this community. We've gone round and round about school safety. But if you let a child sex predator near your building, and it just happens with one, go on to Dads Against Predators, Truckers Against Predators. You might know Skeeter Jean. We work with them all the time. The videos are out there online. We've caught teachers. We've caught people with children. And they all say, we never did it before. We expose them, and we turn it over to the police. Nearly every single time. We have 173 arrests. We work with the police in every single county in this state. But I want you to make sure you sit down, take your time with it. If you can make it public, let the public be able to have their input and make sure that what you write into that policy is so simple that a kindergartner can read it. Because they're not coming after you, John, I can promise you that. If they're going to be coming on this campus, they're coming after these kindergartners, these 7th graders. And they're, Lucas, you're in that age bracket. It's disgusting. We've met some of the most disgusting, vile people on earth. There's 21 of them that live in this city. We know their names. It's very public. You can look it up. But it should be known, because they're not going to walk in and say, hi, I'm here. Nope. But if it's in the hands of a select few, make sure you have that in the line, or you're going to set yourself up for a major, major catastrophe. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Clay.
Good. Okay. Superintendent's report.
So I just wanted to give an update on the foundation. So our staff give back in lots of ways, and we had over 50 employees contributing each payroll to the foundation, which comes to about $115 each payroll. So we did announce a competition at Back to School with the winning building being able to get a breakfast, and we had a tie with the middle school in Ferguson Woods and central office. So my husband, I say my husband mine, but really my husband, made several breakfast burritos, and Leslie Rollins, the president of the foundation, had some fruit and juice, and those staff members were able to come here. We set up kind of a little breakfast for them. Some of them got a grab and go. That was the day that we had some snow on the ground, but it was good to just kind of talk with the staff and really appreciate the fact that they continue to give back to the district in many, many ways. This Saturday I did the MASB Public Relations training, and I'll be sending on the slideshow for that, so that was a good training on Saturday. As far as strategic plan is concerned for communication and engagement, we did send out our December newsletter. The POP is also on our website, and that highlights the bully prevention strategies and things that are going on in the buildings. And then also, I'm hoping to send out communication to families on Run, Hide, Fight. Our safety task force meets, I think it's tomorrow. So we've been working on communication for families so they can kind of understand that protocol, and so we're hoping to get that out soon. For academic programs, as well as learning environment and culture, we had the mentoring program that was talked about today, and then also our positive school climate teams are continuing to meet. And for personnel, we are working on, so we're been having really good luck with our increase in teacher substitute rates, but we're still having a difficult time with paras. So right now we're exploring using EduStaff, which is the same service we use for teachers, to help increase our para subs for the buildings. So right now we have about 14 people who are signed up to be para subs, but really only 6 from that list have actively been subbing. And you know, we have one building that has a couple dozen, and so when you get that many paras and you've got flu and RSV and COVID going around, 6 paras isn't a whole lot. So, and then I'm also exploring some different posting sites to be able to get our reach out a little bit more. And then last but not least, I really want to make sure we thank Leslie Nelson Phelps for the music presentation. I think I was telling Brad when I came in that one of the things I love to do when I go to Shavy is to stop in her classroom, because the kids will always perform for me, and it's just really a nice treat. And then I also think we need to make sure that we thank Jason. Jason's here for our board meetings, but he was the traveling cameraman tonight, and so just really appreciate Jason and his help for these meetings. That's all I have.
Any questions for Dr. Sticker? Okay, thank you. Moving on to closed session, recommendation by Superintendent Shauna Spicker, the Board of Education go into closed session under Section 8H1, attorney-client privilege of the Open Meetings Act. This is board action is required. A roll call vote is required. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Support. Moved and supported. Lisa, can you please take the roll call vote?
Angelina Barnes. Wade Hansfight. Jason Hanselman. Brett Stoddard. John Tremontalma.
Yes.
Lisa Trescott, yes. Brad Weaver.
Yes. So we will recess quickly for closed session. After closed session, we will come back for the remaining items on the agenda, including a discussion on the DeWitt Archery Club for adjournment. So we are temporarily at recess until closed session begins in 2 minutes. Thank you. Now in open session, for the discussion portion of the board, I'm going to read a statement on behalf of the board, and then we will adjourn. But I want to make it very clear. First of all, I want to thank everyone for your public comments, your phone calls, your emails, your texts. It is evident that there is a strong passion for archery in this community, and we know that that will continue into the future. Our goal in all we do is to maximize opportunities for students and to maximize student participation. Therefore, the district will be signing necessary forms to allow anyone who has satisfactorily completed and passed a background check to become a BAI certified instructor. Further details will be provided by administration at a later date after consultation with legal counsel. That concludes our statement. Anything anyone wants to add or any other comments? Okay, I will entertain a motion for adjournment.
So moved.
Support. Okay, moved and supported. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? We are adjourned.